So how do we develop a supplier selection strategy? Well, it's not as complicated as you think. First, we need to know why we need a new supplier. So that's usually the search for a new supplier. It could be because a contract ended, or the supplier had poor performance, or you have innovation where there's a new need, or a supply market change. All of these could be various reasons, and there's more reasons for getting a new supplier, but these are the major ones. So let's go ahead and move on. So we have our strategic sourcing matrix. Now, as you know, this one's been popping up in your introductory class, your supply chain management class, and now in this one. So which ones are we going to look at? Well, we can look anything from routine to critical buy, because it depends on our relationship that we're going to have. Is it a transactional relationship where we just go to a store and buy it off the shelf and we pay whatever price is on the shelf? Or are we going to have a strategic alliance where we're going to be really so combined with our supplier that you really can't tell the difference between one ending and the other one beginning? It's just so well working. So usually there's a cross-functional team that is over the strategic alliance, where the transactional relationship, it's just, for example, you. And you make the transactions with a credit card, or you purchase it off a website and bill it to the company. Well, strategic alliance, there's usually competitive bidding and negotiation that goes along with it. And sometimes that's done in the beginning of the alliance. You don't have to do it later because you've already negotiated pricing. So what strategic considerations are important? Well, it depends if we're going to do single sourcing or multi-sourcing. Single sourcing is just having one supplier, and multi-sourcing is having two or more suppliers. My recommendation, depending on the product, is you want to have multi-sourcing. You want to have multiple sources of supply. That's my personal opinion. But single sourcing has its place too. So single sourcing, it allows you to consolidate volume purchases. So you take all of your purchases and you go through one company. And this encourages the close relationships. You know that your sales point of contact, you know their dog's name, you know their kids' names, you know that their kid just lost their first tooth. You know these kind of details because of how close a relationship is. And your supplier can bring innovative products and processes to you. They may see what you're doing and say, hey, there's a better way to do this. Why don't you try this? And always consider that. Talk to the people who are using the product that you're sourcing. Maybe they're just unaware of this new product or process. And you only need to synchronize with one supplier. You only have to learn the way this supplier works, because there's only one of them. And usually there's lower freight costs because you're consolidating. So you'll have larger orders from one supplier. So that means you can have larger shipments, which brings down the cost per item for transportation. Multi-sourcing. So this is more competitive because you're trying to get the best price and service. So you might have a primary company you go to and a secondary, maybe even a tertiary, a third one. So you can mitigate your risk, because if one of your suppliers goes bankrupt and closes its doors, you have more sources of supply, which is important because you just shift your ordering to the other ones. And this avoids too much dependence on one supplier. Just like I said, if your supplier goes bankrupt, you have backups. You have other ones you can go to, unlike single sourcing. And usually you are scanning the market better because of your ability for new technology and products. Because you have different suppliers. So like the single source, they may recommend innovative products and processes. Well, now you have more than one company bringing the same to you. So you have a more wide view on the market. And there's possible to get synergies between suppliers. You might go to one supplier because they produce this one item, but then you have another one that can complement that. And they complement each other. So there's a lot of ways that multi-sourcing is beneficial. So what influences our selection process? Well, we need to look at these. We need to look at the size of the company. Is it bigger than us? Is it smaller than us? Is it the same size as us? Because if we're bigger than our supplier, they might treat us differently than if we were smaller than our supplier. Because they may see us as, oh, well, we don't really care because, you know, you're tiny. You're small fish. We want the whales. So size plays a factor. Now, what about international or domestic supplier? Yes, a domestic supplier in the United States might cost more, but you have less lead time. And that might balance out depending on the product you're sourcing. And also, are you sourcing from the manufacturer or a distributor? If you're sourcing from the manufacturer, you're cutting out a lot of middlemen. If you're not sourcing from the manufacturer, there's some markup going on there, and you might be able to reach out to the manufacturer and get it for a better price. Another option you can do is buy from a rival. I know it doesn't sound like something you should do, but it's possible. Now, we've talked about corporate social responsibility in another topic, but think about the other company and the values of your company. Do they line up? Is your supplier going to aid in your strategic mission based on their corporate social responsibility? Are they sourcing sustainable? Are they fair when it comes to their contracts? All these different aspects you can consider. And based on the answers that you find from these and more that you come up with, it could influence the selection of that company or an alternative company. So think about these. So the next video, we're going to talk more about supply selection for strategic buys. So let's go ahead and move on to the next video.